Holy moly, well, we must be getting conference fatigue.
Yes.
Everybody need to stand up and do some jumping jacks or something like that, get the blood flowing a little bit. Maybe we're waiting for the bar to open. All right, so if there's one common theme I think that we've been running into just about everywhere in the last couple of years, it's clearly the introduction and sort of overcoming of AI in our environments. From my side of things as a field CTO, I'm getting a lot of questions from customers where we fit into this process, and it's really fascinating. We heard before from the team that was here before with Joe and Billy, where AI is fitting into their workflows and some of the challenges and benefits of that as well. And so it's with great pleasure that I talked to somebody from Google, because Google, one of the leaders in the AI infrastructure, in AI in general, here to talk about some of the things. So Wael, maybe please just introduce yourself, talk about your role at Google, and yeah, maybe a little bit about your background as well.
Sure, thank you, Jake. Pleasure to be here. HashiCorp is an important partner of ours, and it's always a pleasure to talk to the community in general. So my name is Wael Manasra. I'm a product manager in Google Cloud, part of the design and configuration team. So we run the Terraform provider for any customer that's using Google Cloud and any of the modules for any of our products. We also have a variety of products in the portfolio that I help oversee, such as Infrastructure Manager, which is an on Google Cloud deployment tool chain that is Terraform deployment capable. Application Design Center, which we'll touch on a little bit later, which is like an AI-assisted workflow to create infrastructure stacks. And a couple of other tools related to Gemini as well. So I've been with Google for just under 5 years. I used to run developer platform products at JP Chase for several years before that, and before that lived in startup world for many, many years.
It's pretty big change from a bank to
small to money
to Google
cloud infrastructure. So who knows what's next? Maybe construction or
yeah, isn't it? It's woodworking. I think
woodwork
is really the next step that everybody's
right.
supposed to go into,
yes.
Like woodworking or clay or something along those lines.
Right.
Pottery, right? Yeah. Before we kind of get into the product that y'all are working on, again, I talked about this because I came from the ad tech industry. And it's really fascinating to see just kind of the progress from machine learning that's really stood out. I think most of the FANG companies are really leaders in this space. They're also easing into or I don't know if easing is the right word, or voyaging into the space of AI. But maybe just talk in general, just what is Google's focus on AI as a company in general?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say easing in. It's
yeah,
more like
maybe not the right way to describe
frenetic race between the biggest players in the world.
Yeah.
I would say there's 3 or 4 core things happening now, both in Google and also across the industry. The first is make the models themselves as amazing as possible, right? So, the more capabilities that these LLM technologies can be fit into, the more value is created, for the economy as a whole and for productivity in general. So that's one key area. Yeah. The second, which from the product management side, we are all being compelled to think through, is how to be bold and innovative in terms of implementing AI-assisted workflows into those productivity journeys that people are going through across all the products. So you can see that today, where 5 years ago you used to search by typing, and then it was search for the photo, and now it's like search by circling on your phone what you're thinking about or what you're looking at right now. So that contextual integration into the LLM model tool chain is key. The third piece, which has always been part of Google's mantra since the beginning, is do it in a way that's respectful to the user. So don't over-automate, make sure there's a human in the loop, make sure that privacy and trust characteristics are upheld. And so that's really important because think of all the things you type into Google search or in your email. The trust with the user is super important. And as we will talk about later, when you start getting into cloud infrastructure, it's not my deepest secrets that I'm dreaming about at night and blogging about. But if things go wrong, the repercussions of that can be very significant. And so it's important to make sure people are involved in overseeing what the AI is producing and proposing.
I mean, is it strange that I'm like dreaming about infrastructure at night? I mean,
I know.
that's a little bit strange. Yeah. So Armand had a pretty interesting announcement yesterday about a partnership that we have,
Yes.
and the introduction of the product that we were just talking about here a second ago. Could you just kind of talk about that, introduce it, and kind
Yeah,
of
we
explain
can.
what's going on with Google?
Very excited for Armand to have announced this yesterday. It's something that quite a few people in this room have been working on behind the scenes for some time. Terraform is extremely important for us because it is such a dominant player in the enterprise ecosystem in particular. We look to Terraform as the actuation, the definition, the way to create systematic reproducible consumption at Google Cloud scale. So we need to make sure that that works really well. I'll throw a slide up here just to kind of talk about sort of the high-level concept that we're pursuing in Google Cloud today, which if you see the left side, the green on the left side is sort of the work that you as an enterprise want your software developers to be focused on. It's the business value generation work. But the blue is compliance, security, scalability, performance, observability, like implementation of all of those characteristics into the green. And you can see it takes a ton of extra work and expertise and learning across that infrastructure lifecycle, from designing to deploying to operations. And so we hear a lot about shifting left, right? Like shifting the best practices into the infrastructure as code. But really our vision is to shift all that stuff down into the cloud infrastructure layer itself so that it does it for you and you don't even have to think about it. And so I'll provide some examples of that here just really briefly. And so the value of that, if we can do it right, is that we'd make it easy for you to address all of these operational challenges that we all deal with and get paid to deal with on a daily basis, about how do I make sure the application is scalable and resilient and that I can support it and understand what it's doing, what are the operational health characteristics today, where are my deployments, how are they operating, and what is the cost of all this stuff, and am I efficiently set up. So, if we do that right, and this was an example of one of the products that we've been investing in heavily to help practitioners do this. This one here is called Application Design Center. So Gemini is the name of the AI brand at Google and also in Google Cloud. And it does things like help you produce slide decks and write emails. And now it also helps you generate Terraform solutions based on use cases. And the previous panel here was talking about modules that represent best practices that have sort of that enterprise overlay. Like when we do compute instances or when we do Kubernetes clusters, here's the specific way that we do them at our company. We can teach the AI that this is the way you do it. And if you don't have that corpus of definition, then Google will provide its own best practices into the Terraform itself. Then we can help you produce these infrastructure patterns. And this is really designed to accelerate the platform engineering team, which we've heard so many times. It is like, sort of, if you go back a couple years ago, where application developers were sort of forced into the cloud infrastructure world. Like they just want to deploy a container or build some microservice backend, but now they're trying to figure out like the serverless infrastructure stack and which database to use and all these things. And so it was a bit of the Wild West, and so these platform teams that kind of came to being and become the central authority, and they're going to follow the cloud architecture rules of the land and implement them. But then these platform engineering teams start to become the constriction point, where there's this like backlog of ServiceNow tickets. And I think one of the previous gentlemen was saying it used to take 4 weeks for an environment to be created, but by creating these templates of like reproducible infrastructure patterns, they're able to get that down to a couple hours, right? So our goal here is to help the platform engineers create those patterns using the best practices synthesized with the assistance of AI, and then provide a self-service environment around this. And in companies that are more flexible, that want to maybe empower the application developers to sort of experiment and explore on the edges, this technology can help the application developers themselves go into what I call beginner expert mode. They may not know Terraform, they may not know cloud infrastructure, but they know their use case really well. So they can get a solution built out to say 80 or 90% confidence, and then hand it over to the platform engineering team. They can do a review, get it approved, and then say, hey, you know what, this is a really great, this Redis cache layer is really smart. I could see a bunch of people in the company using this the next time we build a backend microservice that has idempotency checks or whatever. And let me go ahead and add this to my catalog as an approved template so that it's a self-servicely available solution in the future. So this like virtuous circle is really what we're trying to do with this one here. This product, again, going back to that Terraform ecosystem, the announcement from Armand yesterday, is going to produce Terraform in the latest version, using the TPG provider 7 that we just announced. And so you can take this Terraform, understand what the AI is doing if you're a coding first viewer, or in the previous slide as I showed you, use that low code canvas to do the same. And again, you have that human in the loop experience where you can kind of like watch over what it's doing. And then when you're ready, you can export this Terraform, move it over to HashiTools or whatever other third-party ecosystem deployment tool chain you're using, put it into your Git repo, engage with the CI/CD process, and sort of that's the idea with this one.
Yeah, so I guess in that particular diagram, you had sort of a graph view. It seems like graphing is
the du jour.
Yeah, it's the meme du jour, if you will. But is that graph, the representation of the Terraform code, is this something like you have a visual representation of kind of a best practices architecture, and then you're able to like export that code out into actual Terraform?
That's exactly right. I'm going to age myself here, but when I came out of university in the year 2000, I had an internship, and there was this product called Dreamweaver, which was basically like you didn't have to know HTML code, but you could design. I see some nods, some head nods here. And the dream of that was so cool. Like anyone can be a coder. I just work on a what you see is what you get interface. So the ethos of that, 20 something years later, like lives on in this product example here, where you've got this AI assistant. I can type in natural language. I can drag and drop products and connect them together, and it's generating Terraform behind the scenes. That's not just Terraform. It's Terraform that has like best practices imbued in it. And so I think we want to cater to a diversity of user types. Everyone from the sort of I'm just tinkering all the way to I'm a platform engineer, just show me the Terraform and let me direct edit it.
Okay.
But then you can flip back to the visualization viewer as well, and take that image and check it into your repo, and it's like, oh, this was the state of the architecture 3 months ago, and I can as humans, it's just faster to like digest information visually. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And another big ask that I get from my customers in the field is that it's great that AI models can output Terraform code, but it doesn't necessarily understand the patterns, right? So like overall, it's like, hey, we have a particular development pattern, we have particular design patterns inside of our architecture.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, for one, having like a visual representation of that, but then like how do you wrap in that customization of those environments inside of something like that?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've seen this happen in the, setting Terraform aside for a second, we've seen this happen over the last year and a half or two in the coding world, right? So you had like models that were designed, they were trained on the entire public corpus of GitHub code that's out there. All the open source code in the world was like sucked into these models, and now when you start to write a function in the programming language of your choice, it auto-generates what it thinks is like a complete thing based on the public knowledge. When companies like GitHub and Google and others started going and selling that into the enterprises started to say, well, we're sitting on a gold mine treasure trove of our own private repository information. We don't want to pull in public code. We want to train these models on our private code and have the augmentation for our software engineers come from the history of software engineering at our company. And so that same model is now moving into this Terraform generation world as well, where you could say, as a platform engineer, again, as in the previous panel, where they may have invested heavily in creating their own custom components, their own infrastructure patterns, and they're sitting in a private repository somewhere. Well, I can just point this tool at the private repository and say, from now on, anything you design needs to be heavily weighted or can only use these components. I want to mute out, you curate away the Google ones, or I want to accept some of the Google ones and all of mine. And so this control capability is designed to provide safe self-service to the consumers, because it's like, it's dynamic design based on pre-vetted, pre-approved ingredients that were given to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You introduced a newish term. I hadn't heard the term shift down before. Like the concept of like taking a lot of that developer toil and moving it down towards the platform team or towards the cloud itself. I actually challenged the concept of self-service in the fact that a lot of times what developers actually want in that particular model isn't actually self-service. It's more like full service. Or you would go into the gas station and you just drive in and somebody would pump your gas and wash your windows and change your oil and things like that.
Yeah.
And so this concept of like shift down feels a little bit more like that. It's like this concept of like full service, just show up and get whatever you need from this thing and go off and do the really fun creative stuff, and then focus maybe some of your AI knowledge and some of that towards those new capabilities. So really fascinating. A new term for everybody. So not only do you have to shift down and shift to the left, but it's sort of interestingly enough, I almost wish it was up and to the right, because that seems to be where progress is.
That's the magic quadrant.
We're going down and to the left, and we're getting benefits out of it, but I love it. So let's shift gears a little bit though, and maybe put your hat on from your previous experience, specifically at the bank.
Yeah.
And both Joe and Billy talked about some key elements, around things like compliance and security, with the ability to have that agility in mind. And so, with that hat as a platform leader in the banking space with very, very highly regulated environments, like what would this have given you the ability to do in that previous position?
Yeah, I think there's a spectrum. There's no right answer to this. So depending on, like I like to call this secure by design, right?
Okay.
So ideally, the pattern that you pick or that is given to you to serve your use case is secure by design, is compliant by design.
Yeah.
Now, the harder you want to push on that, the more brittle and like less creative and flexible the enterprise can be, right? I mean, so we talk to some companies where they say, I want the output to be secure by design and compliant by design, but I still want to allow people to innovate and add more products in, and then I want you to run like a linting process against my OPA rules, for example, my Sentinel rules, or Wiz, or Security Command Center, so many of these products out there, so that before I go into runtime, before I deploy this, or it's still during design when it's cheap and easy to make changes, I get flags, warnings, maybe even blocking controls that prevent me from proceeding to deployment. So I'd say that's the middle road. Now, if you're dealing with like highly right HIPAA, PCI DSS, FedRAMP compliance, these kinds of things, it's more like, hey, platform engineering and the CISO office have ordained these golden templates as the only option for you that is fast path and self-service, available in sort of like a waypoint or an IDP. And if you want to do your own thing on the side, that's fine, but it's going to take 4 weeks to go do a review.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's really funny because Joe used a phrase that's very similar. I don't think Ron's here yet, but it's this concept of like the freedom versus control, or freedom versus leverage is what I hear Armand use a lot.
That's right.
And it sounds like that perfect balance between how do I allow my developers to have that freedom, to allow that creativity, but like you're saying, be secure by design. And again, I think it's sort of like having your cake and eat it too. And it's really fascinating because the introduction of AI to me was very scary, because it felt like almost like the cloud days in the beginning, right? Like think about the resistance to cloud was like, hey, it's not secure. People are going out there and just kind of it's Wild West. You allow people a lot of freedom, and it blew up, costed a balloon. You had lots of different security incidents and whatnot. And what fascinates me, I think, is like with the introduction of AI, it feels like almost all of that stuff just kind of went out the window. Like everybody kind of, we over-rotated on the ability for folks to innovate and move in this space, but it's like almost at all costs to cost and security. And so, I mean, again, it's really fascinating how we can wrap all these things up into one, also kind of like speed and security at the same time. Yeah. And again, from like your experience inside of here, like, what are some of the additional benefits maybe you have? We've talked about like security and compliance. So there's other elements inside there as well.
So I think to your earlier point, it's going to take time to settle. We're all learning. We're all figuring this out together. when we look back at today's best practices, it took a lot of iteration to get to them, and now we talk about them like it's obvious. Of course, everything should be revisioned and CL approved and GitHub controlled, but like these were, spawned little concepts that were disjointed, and so you see these like big companies like HashiCorp kind of trying to bring it together, or Google bring it together. We talked about security. Another one that I get really excited about is like observability by design. If you think about cloud, one of the big promises of cloud is that it's scalable, and but like that scalability is at the infrastructure layer, not so much at the application code layer. But if you can implement observability by design into your system, so that all of the infrastructure products and all the application layer is emitting really smart telemetry into some sort of central system, then you can have the AI help you investigate challenges that you're dealing with, right? So it's not just design time, it's like we use design time as an opportunity to enforce collection of telemetry that will then be valuable, real-time telemetry that will then be valuable on day one and day two. So that one gets me really excited as an area we're working on really aggressively, where if you have an application well tagged and well monitored, even if it exists across, in Google, other cloud providers do this maybe slightly differently, but there's this idea of folders and projects, and so maybe the database is in project A, and the front end is in project B, and the data pipeline is in project C. If I can tag all these things as belonging to one application, and then have the AI be entrusted to observe and manage and inform me proactively on potential problems, or help me remediate issues. One product we launched recently is called Google Gemini Investigations, where I should go dig through the logs, and it was like, hey, these 502 errors appear to be because you misconfigured the node pool to not scale up, and you've maxed out, and by the way, your billing administrator needs to approve because you're capped at 5. And so like that, getting to that root cause quicker is a really clear example. Another one is, Armand yesterday kind of had these 3 personas. It was sort of the infrastructure designer, the app developer, and then it was the FinOps person, the money person is like watching over everyone at the end. Same thing, if I go to the AI and I say I want to stand up an agent, an AI agent, I mean, you could do that on a Kubernetes cluster with like a NVIDIA G4 that's going to run you $30,000 a month, and you can also do it with like a managed service endpoint that's pay as you go, and there are huge differences between those two things. So nudging the users towards the right choice based on what the FinOps operator, what the organization's like expectations are, and then giving the FinOps people oversight, through dashboarding, like, hey, this is over provisioned, this is too fancy. I'll help you change it to some other more cost-efficient structure.
Right.
Is like, it's not observability, it's like financial operations observability. It's a different kind of observability.
Yeah, but I think that the overall efficiency metrics are hyper important as well, and it's fascinating because you have this kind of feedback loop of not only, again, like you saw, is like I can define this thing, but also update in relative real time as to the size and shape of this infrastructure, because again, I came from an ad tech background, and we were very heavy AWS in the early days. And the biggest surprise that we had was that we were spending like $100,000 a month at one point for our infrastructure, and just through like proper analysis of the observability framework and like what the actual usability and the cost were inside of that environment, we actually reduced our cost from $100,000 a month down to about $20,000 per month.
Amazing.
And it wasn't just the fact that we were letting developers just kind of go off and create infrastructure and just leave it up and running, but it's also just kind of the size and shape of this thing, and through auto scaling operations and other areas like that, we found the efficiencies in just like what could be on and what could be off at any given time. And I'm just kind of curious your opinion about that, like in terms of where does this fit into that idea that maybe we have some assumptions as to what we need for infrastructure and like what actually comes out the other side.
So cloud products have so many knobs and dials.
Yeah.
and if you think about, Terraform's purpose is to set those knobs and dials systematically and reproducibly every time. But how do I know what the right configuration settings are? That's an art as much as it is a science.
Right.
if we go back to this idea of natural intents, like what is my intent? What is my use case? So back to that agentic AI, I want to build an agent, for example, that is going to scarf in the intranet content and help my product managers build PRD documents more quickly, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's just say then I have some software development team that's tasked with doing that. If they're even the platform engineering team, if it's a self-service model, there might be like 5 or 6 different Kubernetes cluster configuration options that are vetted and approved, right? Yeah. But if we can take the intent of the user, which is something we're doing now, and map that to configuration sets, right? So like, I have a certain AI model that I want to run. I need it to have a certain latency requirement.
Right.
And as an application developer or as a business owner of that application, like that's the thinking I'm applying to set my requirements. I'm not thinking, oh, that needs to be TPU model XYZ in EU West Region 1. And so if we can take if we can load test the system against all the different configurations and then build sort of a price performance curve and train an AI model on how to set the right configuration values for this product type or this combination of products, then all I have to get from you is where do you want to be on this price performance curve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it might be kind of nice. I need an application that can handle 5,000 requests per second, but cost me $500 a month or something along those.
Nice? Yeah.
To have those kind of knobs and dials inside of that infrastructure,
right,
that's
right.
great.
Yeah. So if we can talk about reliability, do you want to be 3 nines or 4 nines? Because there's a huge price difference between those, right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be 200 milliseconds average latency at P90, or are you okay to be at 400? So all of these things can have dramatic effects, not just on the configuration choices you make, but also the products you use even before the configurations. And so I think all of these cloud providers are starting to move in this direction. Certainly on the Google Cloud team we are. We want to help people make it easier to pick the right products, configure them appropriately, and then get Terraform out of this that's going to like help you reproduce that over and over and over without having to figure it out again.
Yeah. I've been asking a lot of folks who've worked in the AI space and experimenting in the space recently, and there's a lot of it that people are talking about this week. Any kind of like hints or like suggestions and lessons that you've learned as you've begun to like use some of these tools and like maybe some of the roadblocks and things like, hey, are there any cheat codes?
Right. I've been really fascinated sitting in user research studies where we show technical practitioners some of this like amazing new prototype stuff, right? Yeah. And I, as a product manager, I'm always so excited to show like the shiniest wares and how amazing this stuff is. But the amount of skepticism that people have in trusting the AI, right? It's so funny because we're all going to go on airplanes and autopilot's running the whole thing, and no one blinks twice, and like that is total automation, like total trusted automation. Yeah. But when it comes to code, infrastructure, configurations, like my trick is like. Don't overtrust it. Trust it to 80%. Trust it as an accelerator, but like still read the email that Gemini produces before you hit send, right? Like still like, it'll speed you up, but you still need to be involved. Yeah. And I think that companies that are hesitant to adopt AI all in are worried that it like cedes control away from the human. Yeah. And I would say, like, no, the human can still do the CL review. They can still decide whether it deploys or not. But getting you to 80 or 90% faster is just such a huge productivity boost that we can take you down from that 4 weeks to a couple hours plus a human check. That to me is success. That is the cheat code. Just don't like give it all away. Don't look at it as a Boolean of like we're all human or we're all AI and we have to make a choice. It's really like a hybrid. We're going to live in this hybrid form for years to come.
Yeah, in that case, the buttons and knobs that we're pushing is sort of like the cow clicker game. You're just saying, yes or no or something like that. We're kind of swiping. Hopefully, we wouldn't get to that point where AI is sending us stuff and swipe yes or
I don't know.
left or right.
I don't know.
Or something along those lines.
I have a friend who jokes that he wants to like jump in front of the Waymo to make sure it stops. You trust the AI way too much. Like I wouldn't do that just yet.
Yeah, and it's very fascinating. So I have my family with me, and my daughter's 10. My wife is not, and my wife is very anti-technology. My daughter was ready to just jump into the Waymo as soon as she found out that there were robotic cars.
So cool.
She was into it like instantly, and
Yeah.
meanwhile my wife was there. Now the interesting thing is that the proof of the pudding's in the eating, as they say, and very fascinating. She's taken probably 3 or 4 or 5 different Waymos in a time without me being in the car. And so, a little bit of that trust is like, if you build those trust models by using the things in a very safe and controlled way, it allows you to like say, okay, well maybe I will trust these systems a little bit
Yeah,
longer.
I mean, we are adjusting so quickly, and I do predict that very soon, if not already, we may fully trust AI to design, configure, and deploy to a test environment, and in a couple of years, we may trust the AI to elevate a human-tested test environment to staging, right? And so,
Right.
like, as we kind of go through this and learn together, obviously, we will learn to trust it more as it's sort of, accuracy levels increase.
Yeah.
Humans make mistakes too. Like, no one's perfect.
Yeah. I would argue that the concept of non-determinism, like we're very focused on this concept of non-determinism, but as you close the gap between the error rates between like humans, what we call a hallucination, it's just
Yeah.
the variance in our expectations, is that once we cross that boundary, then that becomes a much different story, right?
That's right.
We may
Yeah.
trust those systems to actually do that takeover and hopefully in a safe and controlled way. Well, I really appreciate this talk. It's really exciting to see some of this. Again, our customers are constantly asking us for, configure or the infrastructure as code that looks exactly like the shape of both their infrastructure and their policies, and so it's really exciting what y'all are doing. Appreciate the
Absolutely.
partnership, and again, thanks for
Very excited for the work ahead between
all
both
right.
companies.
All right,
Yeah,
super.
thank
Thanks
you.
a bunch. Yeah.
Bye.